What does the best 17 look like for the Broncos this year? So, the Zero Tackle team here, we've made our call and we're going to break it down for you in this video. But before we do that, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. We've got plenty of NRL content coming out this year and you want to be a part of that. So, with that out of the way, let's get to it. Before we get into it, don't forget zerotackle.com is the #1 independent destination for all your NRL news, player movement, and now games. Check out our latest game, NRL Streaker. Test out your footy stats knowledge, challenge your mates, and see if you can get your name on the leaderboard. All right, and back for 2025, Rugby League analyst Darren Parkin. Welcome back, mate.
Good to be here, yeah, and nice to start off with our look at the best 17s of each side. So it's creeping up once we get into February. Obviously, the matches come around pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go to the Broncos. Michael Maguire, new coach. He's admitted pretty openly that there's a lot of change coming for them in a number of spots this year.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, they played in a grand final. They were 7-4 last year, and then it all sort of fell away. They missed the finals, disappointing end, and it just sort of just felt like they were a little bit stale in a couple of areas, but most of the pieces are probably still there. So it's just what kind of tinkering can they do to breathe a bit of life in and turn what they currently have into a side that might be able to challenge for the flag, and how much of last year was psychological given how much control they had in that grand final before they lost.
Yeah, they're an interesting case, the Broncos. So let's get to it. Let's go through the best 17, starting with the backs. Starting with the full back, we've got Reece Walsh. No disputes there, pretty locked in.
No, that's an easy one to start. And, Walsh and a couple of the others that we'll mention, Adam Reynolds and Payne Haas, were a bit of what went wrong for them last year. They played 41 of a possible 78 games collectively, so missed about half the season with injury. That origin period in particular was cruel for them. But yeah, and this is also in the section of the backs, which we'll get to, is where Ben Hunt will start, I think, with the Ezra Mam suspension.
Yep. And then going down the list, so the two wingers, Jesse Arthurs and Selwyn Cobbo, not a stack of depth in this role.
No, they don't have a lot coming in behind those guys. Jesse Arthurs exploded in the back end of 23 when they made the grand final and kept that going, so he's an automatic selection. And Selwyn Cobbo spent a lot of time in the centres, but that's been one move. You mentioned at the start, Michael Maguire talking about change. He's flagged this one a lot, so I expect that we'll see that straight away.
Yep. Absolutely. Moving down again, the centres, because Tony Staggs and Dean Mariner. Staggs probably the other dead set lock in that position there.
Yeah, another easy one for them. And Mariner spent most of his developmental time as a junior sort of progressing up through the ranks in this role, so he should transition into that pretty smoothly. So not a stack of surprises here.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the halves combination of Ezra Mam and Adam Reynolds. Of course, Ezra Mam going to be suspended until round 10.
Yeah, he'll miss about half the season for the off-field indiscretion, and that'll change things around a little bit. So we'll mention in the forwards when we get to it that Ben Hunt will obviously play prominently in the hooker role, you would think, but he'll start, I would imagine, in the 6 alongside Adam Reynolds and spend about half the season there, and then that brings in some players like Blake Moser to change things around in the other roles. But yeah, very timely inclusion given that suspension.
Yeah, looking pretty strong there. Let's move now to the forwards. All right, so the forwards are where they do have plenty of depth. Let's start with the middle forwards. So Payne Haas, we've also got Corey Jensen and Patrick Carrigan.
Of the injured players with Payne Haas, he's the one who's still racing the clock a little bit. Missed a lot of last year, had post-season surgery, which he's recovering from. They're confident he'll get to the line, but clearly he's going to be the option if they get to that role. Corey Jensen and Patrick Carrigan, obviously very representative of the depth and the strength they have through that area as well. It's just a question of how fit they actually are. So there has been some talk about Carrigan sort of moving roles, but I think it'll probably start like that.
Yep. Absolutely. And then, as we mentioned before, in the hooker position, much spoken about return to the club, so Ben Hunt.
Yeah, I think he'll partner Reynolds, as we mentioned, early in the halves before settling into this role when Mam comes back. Blake Moser, probably the early option. We're talking best 17 if everyone's available. We know there is an asterisk on that, but I think Blake will play very early in that role, at least until the suspension ends. If he were to excel in that, then that changes things around a little bit for them, but you'd put that under the banner of a nice problem to have if it eventuates.
Yep. And then the edge forwards, we have Brendan Piakura and Jordan Raki.
Yeah, again, an easy one. Those two sort of had a mortgage on the role last year, and there aren't too many sides in the competition that wouldn't take these two to start in this role. So, they've got depth, but also they've got a really solid group. So they'd be looking to not change that around too much.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's round it out with the interchange. In this section, probably looking at a utility and 3 middle forwards. So we've got Moser, Willison, Takura, and Hetherington.
Yeah, and under the assumption that a lot of the guys who are injury prone, that maybe one or two of them stay that way, the chances that you click your fingers and they all play every game is unlikely. So as we said, Blake Moser comes into play early, which would then free up another interchange spot. And depending on Reynolds' niggles, you still had a few of those in the off-season. Jock Madden's another one that could move into a playmaking role early on in the season, who's not in the squad. Kobe Black also, I think, will land game time throughout the course of the year, and Billy Walters' potential coverage for 9 and even number 6 at a pinch. So there's some depth outside of the 17 that I think you're going to see rotated through quite a bit. So it's a good squad overall, and I think the change will help them out quite a bit.
Yep. All right, so that is a strong-looking list. They're most likely going to be contending. Do they have the pieces to get back to challenging for a premiership?
I think they do. If you balance the Panthers era and who challenged them the most at the business end of a season, it was the Broncos in that 2023 run where they had effectively a mortgage on the premiership and just let it slip late in remarkable circumstances. Yeah. But they were right there. Last year there was an element perhaps of the psychological where they sort of struggled to get out of their own way a little bit. They've changed things up, but the depth of the squad is still pretty strong. So, yeah, I would say they're in the frame again to push up into the mix.
Yep. Absolutely. So let us know in the comments what you think of our best 17. It's always a contentious time in the comments in the preseason. So jump in there. Let us know what you think. What do we get right? What do we get wrong? Thank you, Darren. And subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't. We have plenty of NRL content coming out this year. We've got big plans for the channel, so you want to be here for that. And catch all the latest NRL news at zerotackle.com.